something that caught my attention, and not a whole lot of people are talking about it. But it's the fact that Vimeo is instituting a major change in how you can watch Vimeo on television platforms such as Apple TV, Roku. They're basically making it to where they're taking off the app features on Roku, on Google Chromecast, on all of the different servicers, honestly, that kind of serve as that mediator between audiences and content. And it's a really interesting story. It's going to happen this month, actually. So not only did they just announce this, but later this month, on the 27th, Vimeo, Engadget reports, is ending its support for current TV apps. So Android TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku devices. I have 2 Roku TVs in my house just because they're simple. They're easy to kind of, pick apart all the different options that you have for streaming. They really kind of streamline the process in terms of downloading, Macs and downloading all the different apps that you have, all the different streaming platforms. But something that's not necessarily noted in this article that I thought was worth talking about is the fact that a lot of indie filmmakers use the platform of Vimeo, of Film Freeway, and other sites like that to basically distribute through indie means their films, whether it be short form content or feature films. They use Vimeo as a way to send links out in screener form to critics, to different distributors who might pick up their film, prior to and after film festivals. It's really interesting because when I've gotten screeners as a critic, we do a lot of indie cinema work on our channel and on the site. And I would say 80% of the films that we have for submission request come to us via Vimeo. And one of the cool things that I can do is I can watch those screeners on my TV. Now, this doesn't necessarily change the fact that, you won't be able to watch it on your TV. You can still AirPlay it or Google Cast it to the television. But the fact that they're removing the feature off apps, it might spell like trouble for the company, to be honest with you, because if they're not able to keep up with native support of that app, I just worry that we're going down a dark path of them not being able to basically sustain even keeping that platform available for indie filmmakers. And so it was a really interesting story. They don't really have any formal announced plans as of yet. The details were first seen tucked away on a support page. So not only did they not make a formal announcement, but they kind of put it on a terms of service site, if you will, and that's kind of shady. I don't know how many people, you would have to look at aggregate data of how many people actually use Vimeo, for non-indie, non-screening purposes. Like, I'm not on Vimeo unless I am specifically watching something that was submitted to me. So there's probably not a whole lot of ramifications for this in particular. And if you can still AirPlay it or Google Cast it, it's not the worst change in the world. But I make a point to cover these types of stories pertaining to how the industry is fluctuating, specifically with streaming, because that is the future. It's not quite the future that we thought it was going to be, during COVID. We thought theaters were dead. We thought they were never coming back. And I can tell you, as a manager of a theater for 5+ years, that in between 2019 and 2021, there was a point in time where we all thought that there was no recovery and that this was the future. And maybe it's just the fact that we've seen a growing appetite, again, for the theatrical experience, and that they don't necessarily need to have native apps, like Vimeo, supporting, those kinds of endeavors in the way that, for indie filmmakers, in the way that the exhibition industry works for the studios. And maybe they don't see a need for it, and that's why they kind of just brushed it off. Nonetheless, some of the apps themselves also gave the message But the content that has been purchased on Vimeo will still be available. You'll just have to AirPlay or Chromecast it to watch on TV. So instead of, you buy something on Vimeo and you pull it up in the app on Roku or on Apple TV or whatever you use, and it's right there. So instead of that, you're going to have to go to your phone. You're going to have to log into Vimeo. You're going to have to, screencast it, screen mirror it basically to the TV. And that's not good quality at all. And, especially if you don't have a good Wi-Fi support system, you don't have, let's say that you have like 5 megabytes a second for your downloads with your Wi-Fi home system. The chances that you're going to be able to sit there and watch the whole thing in its entirety without buffering or without anything like that, it's nearly impossible. Unless there's absolutely no interference at all, which never happens. It's never the case. So it's really interesting stuff. And again, I talk about this just because I worry about the filmmakers and them losing platforms. Amazon Prime, we did a story about a year ago where Amazon Prime essentially made it to where you couldn't submit your indie films unless you met a certain criteria. So no longer were you able to just put your film on Amazon Prime to be seen, but you had to go through kind of hoops and bounds to get there. And they made it more of a formal distribution process, even for the smallest films. You can have a film that only has a budget of $250, and all of a sudden they have to go through all of these hoops and bounds just to make it available for people on video on demand. Ridiculous. And this is just another example of, I paid for this content on your platform, and now you're taking away my accessibility. Doesn't cripple it, it's not deleting any content, but it does kind of hurt the overall experience, and that in that the user availability will likely decrease because of this. So really interesting. Do you watch any content? Do you have any films or anything, TV shows that you have bought through Vimeo that you are going to be upset about that you can't watch? I should say that you can't really watch nicely anymore. So let us know down in the comments what you think of that story. Again, really interesting. And other than this small article on Deadline, I've seen absolutely no one talking about it. So